Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'll be talking about user interface development consideration. This is around the Lightning experience. So this is a theory lecture. I do understand that people have an impression that when you talk about platform developer too, it's mostly about coding. That's not the case. I mean, you do need to understand a few concepts, why we need to use it, and when do you use it and when do you not use it, right? So today, the main topic I just wanted to talk about around some of the interface development consideration, the technology which you can use and the reason why you should use and the reason why you should stay away from it, right? I'm going to use the Jambo, right? This is pretty flexible, right? I don't want it to use a slide because if I wanted to use a slide, you might as well go and read by yourself, right? What's the point? So, what I'll do, so I will write down the heading. It's just a user interface development considerations, right? I think I spelled it correctly. Okay, cool. Right. So now, we are living in a modern world, right? 2021. So we got a lot of technologies. You got a lot of web applications out there, say Instagram, LinkedIn, quite responsive, right? Twitter. It's not like the websites, in back in 90s, right? Or even early 2000, it was not so great. Now everyone wants, website which is more interactive, mobile ready. For instance, take an example of the Google Maps, right? Google Maps is pretty old, but it's still very responsive, right? So, people have certain expectation when it comes to, about around the web apps, right? So they don't want a clunky, cluttery web apps, right? You go to any e-commerce website, for instance, right? If you have a website which is extremely clunky, extremely, congested, then you know you may not be comfortable shopping using that website, right? It won't give you that an amazing user experience. So that's one of the concept that Salesforce uses widely, the user experience, right? Which is very important for Salesforce. So that's one of the things you should understand as a developer as well, right? What does the user experience means for the user, right? So if you look at the old Salesforce technology, Salesforce had Salesforce Classic, right? So my apologies for my bad handwriting. I know it sucks. It's yeah, I can't help it, right? So we had something called Salesforce Classic, and you might have even heard about the Visualforce, right? Classic Visualforce. So in Salesforce Classic, everything was page centric. Okay, so, you might probably know about it. So if you look at the Salesforce Classic, you go and open the Salesforce Classic page, everything is around the page centric, web application model. It's amazing. It worked. It offered user what they wanted to do, right? But the challenge, right? If you wanted to have more like a dynamic experience, like you have a responsive web page, right? Say, for instance, you wanted to use on your phone, it's not a great solution, right? Because what happens, right? If you're using a page centric application model, then obviously, say for instance, you are a user, right? A great sticky man. So try to interact with the browser, right? Say for instance, the Salesforce Classic. So this is a browser. Just say they wanted to when a user try to interact with the Salesforce Classic, the Salesforce browser, so obviously, it has to go and get the data from the server, and then the server has to send the response back to an HTML. So it's not really, from a functional perspective, it's okay, but from a user experience perspective, right, you might have see some kind of latency, right? And although you can argue that, right? I mean, this has been a tried and tested model for Salesforce for years. That's correct, but you know, that's not exactly how the web technology works in today's time. Gone were the days of PHP. Mind you, there are PHP developers out there, and they can argue that hey, PHP is great. Yeah, I'm not saying anything against PHP. I'm just saying, giving an example about the page centric. um, so Then Salesforce comes up with another one, which is something called an app centric, which you might have already heard about it. This is an app centric model. So where we extensively use JavaScript to modify, transform, and animate the user interface rather than replacing the entire page at a time, right? When we looked at the page centric model, it's kind of replacing the entire page at a time, but that's not the case when you're dealing with an app centric model. Okay, and this model is mobile ready. This is what we call as a new lighting experience. Okay, um, so that's right. So this is what we call it as a new lighting experience, and this is what most of the Salesforce new technology is based on. Okay. Now, you must be wondering, okay, that's great, page centric and app centric. So that means that I don't have to worry about the page centric. No, really, that's not the case, though, right? That's not what I'm saying as well. So the page centric and app centric model will stay for a long time, right? It's not that the Salesforce is gonna, put a kill switch to it, to the page centric, saying, "Oh, let's move everything to the app centric and put a kill switch." No, that's not going to happen for a long time. But that being said, right, um, I just wanted to walk you through the comparison, right? So when to choose Visualforce, when to choose, Aura component, when to choose LWC. It will help you, or an hybrid model, right? So this is exactly what I want to talk about today, mostly for this lecture, right? It's important you guys to understand, right? Because just because you're a developer, it doesn't mean that you can skip the side of things when it's really important, right? Because I have seen personally developers, right? They say, "Oh, okay, let's flag Visualforce pages and old technology, bugger off," right? That's okay, but imagine if you're in a company, right, where you got no LWC developers. Everyone is a Visualforce developers, right? Or let's say you have an AngularJS developer or React developer. So imagine the learning curve, right? To move, you have to look for the return of investment at the same time, right? It's not only about code every single time, right? Because that's where most of the developers do mistake. It's okay to focus on code, but that you have to worry about the end result, right? The money you bring it to the company, right? The return of investment. That's the most important thing. Okay, so we're gonna look at the Visualforce, okay? Because why do we use Visualforce? And because Visualforce has been around for a while, and does it offer any advantage? If say for instance, if I'm a developer, if I want to learn Visualforce, is it very important or is it not? Right? Okay, so Visualforce is a robust. It's a platform, right, for building page-centric app, as I already said, right? It's extensively used in the classic technology. Visualforce has a lot of components out of box, which is pretty amazing, right? And the drawback is that it's the UI generation happens on the server side, right? So I gave an example of a sticky man here, right? So you try to request an action on the browser, and it just go and hit the server, and the server sends the page back to the browser, right? And so that's one of the caveat. And another thing is, if you can use Apex standard and custom controller, right? So you can use Apex, right? You can use the standard, and you can use the custom controller. Okay, so that's you can use it for the business logic, right? If you wanted to get the data uh, from the database, you can use the custom or the standard controller based on the requirement. Okay, now now you must be wondering, okay, that's pretty cool. Are there any other advantage of using Visualforce? Yeah, so like I said, Visualforce is a tried model, right, and tested model. It's been there for a long time, right, and it has built-in metadata integration, which is fantastic. And most of the developers out there, they do know Visualforce, unless someone is starting out. So most likely, if you're working in a company, you might tend to find the developers who are more confident in Visualforce page. Okay, so that's one of the advantage. Now, what's the disadvantage, right? So the disadvantage I talked about, it has higher latency So you can't really use that for mobiles, right? It's not mobile ready in simple terms, right? And most of the things today happens on a mobile. So when it's not mobile ready, it's not a great solution, right? Because everyone wants stuff to be done on mobile. Okay, that's cool. Right now, what if my company don't have a developer who knows about LWC? It can't happen, right? I mean, you can't really blame, right? So, but I have a React.js developer, and he's extremely talented on React.js, and he's pretty happy with his technology, and he knows a little bit about Salesforce. So, do we have a workaround in that scenario, right? See, I'm telling you a business scenario as well at the same time. So, if you get that kind of scenario, then you can use a kind of a hybrid model, right? So, in that case, what you can do, you can use something called Visual Force. Sorry, Visualforce as Java script application container. So this is kind of a hybrid model. So you know, Visualforce. What are Visualforce page in simple terms? If I ask you a question, it's not a it's not a fancy something out there. It's just a basic. It's a simple HTML page, with some extra tags, right? Which is resolved by a server. That is a Visualforce page is all about. So, so what you can do, keeping that knowledge into consideration, you can pretty much use a Visualforce page as a container, right? It's an empty Visualforce page. And then you can embed your React.js application here, right? So that's pretty much, helps you in this kind of scenario where you're not going to use the Visualforce tags to build your user interface, right? In previous case where you have to know Visualforce page. In this case, you don't really have to know it. You can, pretty much get the React guy to say, hey, give me your application. I'm just going to chuck it on top of it. Okay, so this is pretty much what we call as a single page application. Okay, SPAs, what we call in web technology in web development, right? And so it's not only limited to React.js. You might have Vue.js developer or AngularJS, right, which is a quite popular framework out there. Um, so what are the advantages of it, right? So one of the advantages is that UI generation happens on the client side. So it's like an app-centric model, right? So it's usually used by JavaScript because the JavaScript comes in the picture. So mostly all the interaction, what happens, it's usually the JavaScript that comes in the picture. And so if you wanted to do the data and business logic, Salesforce have built something called remote objects or JavaScript remoting. Just I'll write it down. So it's just like remote objects or JavaScript remoting. Okay. So you can use this to do your data and business logic. That being said, you can also use Apex controller if you wanted to. Okay. So this is pretty cool, and it's highly interactive, right? Unlike Visualforce page, and it gives you an immersive user experience. Okay, now why shouldn't be I using this one, right? You might ask, okay, this is pretty amazing. So why not everyone uses it? Why did even Salesforce bother to go with LWC? You might ask, right? When I can hire React.js and chuck a container there, stuck it on top of it. Well, the first thing, there is no built-in metadata integration. Okay, so that's the one problem, and it's extremely complex, right? And from a developer point of view, it doesn't give that really cool experience, right? People, when they talk about experience, right, they talk about user experience. There is something called developer experience, right? Developer experience is very important because they are the one who's building the technology. Okay. So the Lightning Platform Developer Console, right? If you're going to use that, it doesn't explicitly support, these kind of JavaScript applications. So that doesn't help for people who really wanted to have the great developer experience. So that's one of the caveat of using um, this kind of technology. But that being said, right, this is great if you don't have an LWC developer or a developer who understand Visualforce to the greater level, but he or she has a broader understanding of React.js or AngularJS, and you have an application that's functional and built on React, you can use it. This hybrid system is pretty cool. Now, the big boss, LWC, the Lightning component, right? Lightning Web component. This is the future, right? When it comes to the Salesforce space, okay? And Salesforce offers a lot of components as a part of Salesforce user interface framework for developing dynamic web application. Yeah, you can do for your desktop, tablets, or mobile. Um, One thing I just wanted to tell you guys that from Spring 19 release, that's an API 45 and above. Um, 45. You can build Lightning component with two models. One is the LWC, and other one is the Aura component model. Okay. Now, the thing with the Aura is, right, if you're not going in a Visual Force route, right, I would highly encourage that you use LWC wherever possible. Only use Aura if you find that LWC do not have a similar functionality. Okay. Because Salesforce will eventually come up and say, okay, although we are not touching Visualforce, we are not putting a kill switch. They might say, Aura is not really flexible. I'm not saying they're going to do it. It might happen, but if you're talking from a governance perspective, okay, if you're talking from a return of investment perspective, I honestly believe that since Salesforce is investing heavily on LWC, the Lightning framework, it will help developers out there to learn LWC, right? Because going forward, that might be the source of truth when it comes to a user interface development on Salesforce platform. It might happen, right? Probably 5 years down the line, or maybe 2 years down the line, and they can say, all right, we do support Visualforce page, which is already been built, but the Salesforce might also say, look, from now onwards, you can't build any more new Visualforce pages. You can build whatever old technology you have in place, we're going to still support it. It can happen, right? Companies have done such things in the past. Okay, so I'm not saying to scare you guys, but I'm just saying, so I don't know what's the Salesforce roadmap, but it's good to know, right? If it's up to me, I will invest heavily on learning LWC, right? Or if you don't want it to be part of Salesforce space, if you're React.js, stick to React.js. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so advantage, right? So the UI generation that happens on the client side is similar like what we talked before, the hybrid model. It's just a client side UI generation. So for data and business logic, you got LDC. Now you must be wondering what the heck it is. It's Lightning Data Service, okay? Or you can use Apex, okay? So you can use Apex or LDC. If you use LWC, you can use an Apex. Or if you don't want to use Apex, you can use LDC, right? You can get the data from without using Apex, you can get the data from a Salesforce object, okay? All right, now how does it work, okay? From a user perspective, it's pretty straightforward. So you got a sticky man here, and in New Zealand, if you're in New Zealand, right, you might know that Pack and Save used to have this ad, hey, sticky man. So I got this term from that. We have a supermarket in New Zealand. If those of you are not from New Zealand, called Pack and Save. So they used to have TV ad about the sticky man. So sometimes they show the funny ad. So yeah, sorry, I digress. Okay, so this is sticky man. This is a user, right, trying to interact with the browser, so which has LWC, a Lightning experience, right? When I said browser, means user try to interact with a Salesforce page, which is Lightning centric. Okay. Now, what happens is that when this happens, an application bundle, or you can say component bundle, right, get returned to the client. Client is in terms is this is a client. Okay. And so the browser, right? So this is a browser. It loads this bundle, which is obviously, has information about a component, right? And so the JavaScript application, right? That's actually plays a major role in giving you this user interface, right? So it's not difficult to understand. So a user interacts it. So instead of going and hitting the server, right, in case of Visualforce page to give you the full page, here the JavaScript comes in the picture. It's not even talking to the server, right? When you're dealing with the UI interface here. So your sticky man, try to do something on the lighting experience. The browser, renders your bundle, and the JavaScript pretty much works on your, UI experience. And if you do any kind of modification, it's just the JavaScript does the screen, does the action on the browser, and gives you the experience whatever he wants to do, right? So instead of going and hitting the server, it hits the server when he has to save the data back, right? So that's the difference. It's not a page centric, it's an app centric. Okay, now why do we use LWC, right? So LWC, first of all, is highly interactive. It's mobile ready, right? Since most of the people wanted to use mobile, so it's mobile ready. So it's built on the metadata from the foundation accelerating development. Okay, so now you might wonder, okay, that's fantastic, right? That's great. Now, should I be using LWC for everything? Like I said, no. If you do not have a team of developers who knows LWC, who only knows Visualforce, then stick to Visualforce page. If you do not have a developer who knows either of them, knows React or Angular, then go for a hybrid model, right? And if you are building, or if you have a business requirement where you want to build a community for customers or partners, then in that case, I would highly encourage you to go for LWC, right? Because you can use Experience Builder to create a site leveraging LWC Lighting component. Okay, so if you wanted to render pages as a PDF in your application, then you can't do LWC because right now it's not supported. You have to use the Visualforce in that case. Okay. And if you wanted to do modification to an existing Visualforce, then stick to the Visualforce page. So you have to work out what tool is good for you, right? And if you're a company which has only admins, right, no developers, then I would highly suggest you to go for the Lightning experience because using the Lightning app builder, right, you can build apps and customization without writing a piece of a code. So it depends on the scenario, right? So you can also migrate if you want, right? Because you know, it depends on a business requirement and the return of investment. So that's pretty much I wanted to talk about in this episode. I hope that guys have learned something from this episode. Uh, my apologies. Most of the things has to be theory, so future few episodes will be theory, right? I mean, I will do practical stuff wherever it's required because it's a platform developer, so you need to do some programming, right? So we will do programming wherever we have to do it, right? So that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Take care.